Hello, everyone. I am Corinne Joyvota, Sony shooter and sports photographer. So this question came across last night on Instagram, and I've kind of been thinking about it all day. Sony A1 II or Sony A9 III? And yeah, as someone who shoots on them pretty much all the time, I've got some opinions. So let's get into it. Now, I should probably give you a little bit of background, just so you can understand why I have them. I first got into photography through film. A buddy of mine was starting a video podcast doing like rig rundowns for different bands and all that. And I needed a camera to shoot with. So I picked up a cine camera, the FX30. Awesome little camera. I don't have it anymore, but I loved it. And at the time, I got some really nice glass to go with it. I had the G Master 16-35 and the 24-70. Great lenses. The thing is, I barely used them. Maybe like once or twice a month, which didn't feel right for how much I'd spent on all that stuff. But I always loved photography, so I thought, okay, maybe I'll get into it and actually, shoot photos. Now, at the time, I didn't know a lot about specs. I just figured, the highest megapixels means the best image quality. So I went with the A7 R5, my first real camera. And yeah, I know, kind of bougie for a first camera, but whatever. This thing's still my favorite for just pure image quality. It's insane. The details, the colors, it's just nuts. Now, eventually, I started shooting sports with it. And that's when I started to run into some walls. The burst speed on the A7 R5, I was getting, in RAW was like 7 to 9 frames per second, which, sounded fine at first. But when I started calling photos later, I realized I was always missing the shot. Like the ball would just be before or after the perfect moment. And it drove me crazy. So that's when I started looking for something faster. Now, the A1 II had been announced, but it wasn't really available. Like, do you remember, I don't know if you remember or not, but it was like a good 6 or 8 months after this thing was announced before you could actually just buy one. The A9 III, that was available. And so that's what kind of pushed me towards that originally. Now, I'm not going to get super deep into the specs. There's a ton of great YouTubers out there who do that. I'm just talking as someone who actually uses these things multiple times per week. The A9 III technically doesn't have as good as image quality as the A1 II or the A7 R5. It's got less dynamic range, a base ISO of 250, and it's only 24 megapixels. But that global shutter, yeah, that changes everything. When I used to shoot sports on the A7 R5, the photos just always looked a little weird. I couldn't explain it at first. I didn't really understand the concept of like a slow readout speed, but the photos just felt kind of off. Later, I realized it was rolling shutter. Everything had this like jello-y feel to it. Don't shoot sports with the A7 R5. Just don't do it. The A9 III fixed that completely. The shots are sharp, clean, and they just feel right. At first, I was like, 24 megapixels isn't a lot. But then I remembered that like most Canon pros are shooting 24 megapixels on like the R1 or the R3. So clearly it's fine. And man, this thing rips. It can shoot 120 frames per second, which, let's be honest, that's way too much. I usually keep it at 30 frames per second, and then I'll use this little like custom bump button to get it up to 60 if I'm shooting baseball or something where I want like that kind of like bat on ball or like hand on ball kind of experience. And I've got to say, I actually like my A9 III sports photos better than my A1 II sports photos. Not scientific, but just, again, as someone who shoots on them multiple times per week, everything just feels tighter and cleaner. The global shutter really is magic. It is the perfect sports camera. So you might be asking, okay, If you love it so much, why didn't you just get a second A9 III instead of the A1 II? It's a good question. For me, it came down to flexibility. Now, every pro shooter needs at least two bodies, one with a long lens and one with a short lens. Because let's face it, you don't have time to swap glass mid-play. Now, it's weird that I'm saying that, right? But I used to think I could do that. So I used my A7 R5 as my B camera for a while, but I knew it was too slow for certain stuff. So I knew I needed another fast body. That's when I started looking again. And that's where the A1 II came in. Plus, starting to be a little bit more available. Now, the A1 II is not really a flagship in the traditional sense. I know it's their flagship camera, but it's kind of a mix of everything. It's like the A7S III or the FX3. It's like the original A1, which, I mean, it literally still has the same sensor as the original A1. And it's like the A7 R5. They all kind of got together and had a baby. Now, you get the fast readout, the higher megapixels, and some really good video performance. But it's not the best at any one of those things. It's really damn good at everything. The A7 R5 is still a better stills camera. The FX3, which I'm shooting on now, or the A7S III are still better for video. And the A9 III still wins for sports. But the A1 II, that's your all-rounder. When I shoot with the A1 II, I notice it immediately. Now, with the A9 III, I'll take a shot and I'll think, yeah, that's really good, but I'll tweak it a little bit in post. Maybe adjust some of the depth, the contrast, the colors. But with the A1 II, I look at it and go, damn, that's ready to send. The image just feels finished straight out of the camera. Honestly, if I had gotten the A1 II first, I probably would have just bought two of them and called it a day. But since I had the A9 III already, I figured I'd keep it in the mix, and I'm glad I did. Here's how I use them together. If it's a long game, where most of the action is on the far end of the field, I'll put the A1 II on a Sony 400mm 2.8 prime. That gives me the reach and the ability to crop in like crazy with those 50 megapixels. Then I'll throw the A9 III on like a 70 to 200 for those kind of close-up action. Players diving into the end zone, those big moments. The burst speed and the global shutter make those shots feel perfect. But sometimes I flip them. I'll throw the 400 on the A9 III because it handles fast, distant motion so well. No rolling shutter at all. And then I'll use the A1 II with the 70 to 200 for the close-up stuff, where I want that extra detail, that extra image quality. You know, it just kind of depends on the name of the game and what kind of shots I'm going for. So yeah, the A1 II versus A9 III, it's really not a one or the other thing. They do different jobs. Now, if you're purely shooting sports, like fast, unpredictable motion, balls in play, the A9 III is unbeatable by, frankly, any camera from any brand, in my opinion. But if you want something that can do a bit of everything and produce absolutely gorgeous images, the A1 II, it feels perfect. One's the precision tool, the other's the beauty shot. And together, yeah, that's like the dream setup. It really is the dream setup, having both of these. My advice, if you're on the fence, rent them. Seriously, go rent both of them for a weekend. Shoot the same event and see which one fits your style better. If sports photography is your main thing, I'd pick up the A9 III all day long. That's the camera for sports. Daytime, nighttime, fast action, doesn't matter. The A9 III just crushes it. It crushes it. If I were strictly a sports shooter, I would get two of them without question. If it was sports, all day long, two A9 IIIs, done. But if you want a camera that can also handle landscapes, portraits, and studio work, something that does it all, that's where the A1 II comes into play. It shines, it's crazy fast, has great color, and the readout speed is so quick that even when I shoot like helicopter blades, it's almost perfectly straight. The A9 III is actually perfectly straight, of course, with that global shutter, but the A1 II is pretty damn close. So yeah, try them both. Figure out which one fits how you shoot. You really can't go wrong with either. But for pure sports work, the A9 III. That is the one I would trust every time. If I had to go shoot a sports event and I had only one camera to bring, it would be the A9 III every single time. Thanks for stopping in. Thanks for listening. I'd love your feedback in the comments below. Let me know where I got things right. Let me know where I got things wrong. Again, Corinne Joy Vota, sports photographer, and we'll see you on the pitch.